not accept that they've simply been given to us to kind of, it's about responsibility.
Yeah. Steve, we've got a question here from the live chat. Steve, do you talk to dead people? Fess up.
It's an interesting question, isn't it?
You know, it is.
It's kind of where we see death, really. It has to be part of an answer to that. What happens when people die? Or, even better, what happens when people live? What is this state of being that we call life compared to a state of being called death? Is life merely a perception of a particular set of dimensions, and is death something else? Whether I think I speak to dead people, or whether I think as dead people, if you like, we become part of a bigger kind of consciousness, I'm more inclined to go with the second argument in my head. That's not to say that there's something going on, but my inspiration is that, no, I wouldn't say I talk to dead people.
All right. Now, I suppose, would you consider that there is a very thin line between life and death, or is it a huge gulf sort of thing?
Again, it's back to personal, isn't it?
Well, is it? I mean, well, if it is, then we can all make up our own.
Yeah. Do you know? I mean, this is half the stuff. If you're looking into the quantum, I mean, this is coming up in all the new films like What the Bleep, The Secret, and all this stuff, and they're all kind of recognizing this one, if you like, truth. It's not the entire truth, but it's certainly a truth that within a quantum world we live in matter, we live in perpetual creation. That is something that's waiting to happen, that is actually happening, and that is influenced by the way we think, and more importantly, by the way we look at things. Quantum experiments tell us that the quantum universe is closest to a wave universe, a probability wave, something about to happen, and it only becomes something when the experimenter or whoever looks at it, observes it, and therefore makes it happen. Right. So essentially, the universe we are in is a universe of our own creating. If you want to take death into that part of it, then if you perceive the process of death, dying, and therefore dead people as something that's a long, long way away, then your reality is absolutely correct. But if, on the other hand, you want to bring it as close to you as possible, then you can arguably say that you are part of that reality anyway. You're part of that energy, part of that matrix, part of that creation. We're not separate from creation. If you want to go from a Christian perspective, we're not separate from God. We're part of the whole thing, and therefore the divide is literally in your head. It can be nowhere else.
All right.
It isn't a physical thing.
Okay, so if society tells me what reality is, I can reject their view of reality and insert my own.
Absolutely.
I like it.
I totally believe that. I think the thing is we've been conditioned not to.
Right.
Since our birth, we've been conditioned to accept it. And bear in mind, the reality that we perceive is an agreed reality. It is a reality that we all choose to say, this is how reality is, this is how reality will become, this is how gravity, for example, works. I've certainly been in situations where that isn't the case, where, I don't know, time is a really good one. We all have a perception of time as being a linear thing, something that goes from A to B that has so many seconds, so many minutes in it. But we've also all been in a car, stranded in a kind of traffic jam somewhere, and you think hours have passed and it's been a few minutes, and yet you drive for what seems a few minutes and it's been a few hours. So our whole perception is modeled by the way we view it, and therefore it is possible to remodel our way of looking at things in order to make them change. And I think one of the easiest ways, I've worked for a long, long time with people with learning disabilities and so forth, and one of the words that's used quite frequently is challenging behavior. That is, this behavior is challenging, this person is being challenging. Well, who are they challenging? They're challenging you, aren't they? So if you cease to be challenged by that, then the behavior is no longer challenging.
Well, I see that, and you're also talking a little bit of sort of X-Files. You're talking about missing time. I remember
Absolutely.
episodes where Agent Mulder would stop the car, put an X down on with spray paint just to check for missing time. By the way, everybody, I'm going to hold up right now, Steve. You may not, unless you're watching. I am holding up your DVD, which is called Dragons and Rings, and you can get this DVD on Steve's website, which we have on our. In fact, somebody Larry just put that up on the website right now. The crawler there has your website on there. And because, obviously, Dragons and Rings got this question right in. Steve, are there real dragons?
Woohoo! Love it. Are there real dragons? Oh. The reason I use dragons, I'll say why I've called it Dragons and Rings, is as simple as the fact that one of the points of energy that I'm talking about is what are sometimes called ley lines. And ley lines are often referred to as dragon lines.
Really?
One of the really famous projects that went over in this country at one of the stone circles, again, quite close to my parents' home, funnily enough, the Rollright Stones, was a project called the Dragon Project, where they were measuring energy in stones, measuring energy in stone circles, and using that to record and kind of work out how this energy tied into the landscape. And one of the figures that kind of appears, if you like, is a waveform. And if you look at a waveform is essentially a sine wave. It looks like the curls of a snake. So one of the theories is that, if you like, the kind of dragon kind of energy, the dragon form, comes from this perceived snake. Another way to look at it as well is the DNA structure. Again, very much like a snake. And going back to something else I said earlier on about creation myths and so forth, snakes, dragons, sea monsters always seem to occur at some point as givers of knowledge. Whether they're regarded bad or good is another matter.
Right.
But they're certainly seen as givers of knowledge. Whether it's an energy form, I think, again, something that you mentioned there were UFOs, you mentioned ghosts and so forth. To my mind, the energy that we see, that we perceive, is just a very small part of a spectrum. So the visible spectrum that we see runs from red to purple. And that's just a small part. It misses out the infrared on one side, the ultraviolet on the other side. Sound spectrum the same. And what we're attempting to do is perceive energies that are around us in sound, in light, in electricity, all these forms of energy, and effectively convert them into our head, into a picture that makes sense. One of the pictures that I kind of present to people quite a lot is this concept of an alien. And we end up talking about archetypes and Jungian archetypes and stuff like that. Where do we get this original picture of an alien, and why have we projected it onto that energy?
All right, we have this question here. Come in on the Fast Blast. Steve, do you think that people who have sacred knowledge, they may actually be involved in witchcraft?
It's an interesting question. What I'm trying to work out is actually what the question's about. Are they involved in witchcraft? Are we saying that witches have sacred knowledge, or are sacred knowledge people witches? I'd like to kind of quite understand where that person's coming from. I think it depends, again, people's perception of witchcraft. There are a lot of people who've kind of got this conception of people who fly around on broomsticks or practice kind of mutilating babies or goats or whatever the currency is at the moment in sacrifice, and kind of dancing naked up on kind of high moorlands with stone circles and all kinds of stuff, which is absolutely right, of course.
Oh, really?
We do it all the time, 100%. Oh, no, sorry, it's wrong. Sorry, I've just been corrected. That's wrong. That's absolutely wrong, that one. No, the whole kind of concept of modern witchcraft comes from a couple of guys, basically Gerald Gardner and Alex Sanders, in the 1950s over here, who basically researched what they thought was a much older religion, but they actually tagged their knowledge onto something totally different, really. The old religions essentially